My name is Steve, and I'm a life coach. I have met many who, like myself, have been betrayed and hurt by others. Although the only way to fully avoid being disappointed is to isolate yourself from everyone, I've tried, and it don't work well. But I do believe that one can minimize the betrayal and hurt by determining what I call a person's trust score. This nugget of wisdom is about determining one's trust score that guides your interaction with them. Much of what I'm about to tell you is summarized in this proverb. If you loan a man $5 and he does not pay you back, it was worth the $5. Keep that proverb in mind as you go through this video. There are 3 scores that can help us in relating to others: the trust score, the empathy score, and the well-known ominous credit score. All 3 are measures of one's reputation, which takes time and risk to develop. Each one captures different data. For instance, that nasty credit score captures one's management of finances entrusted to them. A creditor can look at one's credit score and determine the degree of risk in lending them money. A higher score often secures a lower interest rate. The trust score is a measure of one's trustworthiness, whereas the empathy score measures how relatable a person is. Do they listen and understand, or argue and condescend? Do they lift others up or tear them down? Although all 3 scopes are important in relationships, in this video, I'll discuss the trust score. All relationships, such as a sports team, a business partnership, or a marriage, require a certain level of trust. Thus, a trust score is simply one's reputation of dependability in how they handle situations they encounter and how they interact with others. For example, shrugging off a given responsibility drops one's trust score, whereas completing a task increases one's trust score. Or choosing to lie to weasel out of a bad situation negatively impacts one's trust score. Conversely, telling the truth and accepting any negative consequences improves one's trust score. Other choices that ding one's trust score are reneging on a deal or making commitments that you never keep. Commitments such as posting another's secret on Facebook. Yet completing that deal or keeping one's promises increases their trust score, particularly when it costs more than expected. To summarize, whereas a credit score provides insight into one's reputation for handling financial responsibilities, the trust score captures the reputation of a person's trustworthiness, dependability, self-control, and discretion. But unlike one's credit score, there is no centralized database for an individual's trust score. So how do you determine another person's trust score? Research, followed by testing. If available, start with their reputation. Ask colleagues and friends if they would consider this person trustworthy. Now keep in mind that the opinion of one's character is always tailored to the person measuring it. For instance, a germaphobe's definition of clean will likely be very different from Mountain Man's understanding of clean. To develop your own trust score, start by investigating one's reputation to determine if it aligns with your understanding of the type of person that reputation portrays. Going back to my example, does your definition of clean align closer with the germaphobe's or the Mountain Man's perspective? The next step is to determine if this person's reputation is limited to their professional or public life, or does it carry over into their personal life? Do confidential issues leak out at the bar? Does a man treat his wife and family in private as he does in public? You're seeking to discern if this is a person of integrity or a pathological hypocrite. Up to this point, checking out one's reputation has not required much personal risk, but starting to test another's reputation is a terrifying step for many, as it takes personal vulnerability. And when you're still smarting from a previous betrayal, any new risk, no matter how small, may be overwhelming, making it easier to crawl back into the shadows. But go back to that earlier proverb. If you loan a man $5 and he does not pay you back, it was worth the $5. Now, $5 may not seem like much of a risk, but I remember negotiating with a car salesman because the monthly payment he was proposing was $5 more than I had budgeted. Finally, after I argued that $5 was the cost of my lunch, he did drop the price. My point is that testing another's trust score does not mean bearing your whole soul. It should be a small risk at first, a little secret that, hey, if it appears on Facebook, it'll sting, but little more. That little secret was worth the $5. But if they prove themselves trustworthy in that little secret, you can increase the amount you're willing to risk. If you're fortunate, in time, your relationship will blossom into one where you will easily trust one another with your lives. Now remember, this does go both ways. If you want a trustworthy friend, you also must develop a reputation of being trustworthy yourself. A friend of mine, Jesus, put it this way. If you're honest in small things, you'll be honest in big things. If you're a crook in small things, well, you'll be a crook in big things. And if you're not honest in small jobs, who will put you in charge of the store? My friend, if you are weary of trying to make it on your own, find another with a reputation for being trustworthy, and then test them by being a bit vulnerable, just a bit. And if they handle that well, then risk a bit more, and over time, you will learn if they have a high trust score.